What if the world's religions are not competing truths, but different pathways pointing toward the same horizon? For thousands of years, humanity has sought the sacred through stories, rituals, doctrines, and traditions. Yet beneath the differences that often divide us, there may exist a deeper current that unites us. To discover it, we must look beyond the surface of religion itself and ask a profound question. What was religion trying to awaken within us all along? Hello, I'm Eric and welcome back to another video from Dragonfly Awakening. This is part 3 of the origins of religion in human history. If you have not caught part 2 or part 1, good to catch them now before coming into part 3. So I've attached those links in this description. Over time, ritual gave rise to priesthoods. Myth crystallized into written scripture. Local deities gathered into pantheons and eventually into monotheistic frameworks. Somewhere along this long arc, many religious traditions crossed a critical threshold. Teachings born from liberation and wonder became institutionalized. When access to the sacred narrowed, when a small group claimed exclusivity, authority over the way, or more pointedly, the only way, religion began to turn inward toward dogma and away from living spirit. Historical scholarship reflects this shift clearly. When ritual became rule, the rise of organized religion followed. Practices that once served as gateways to mystery and connection were increasingly repurposed as instruments of authority. The sacred, once abundant and participatory, slowly became scarce, mediated, regulated, and controlled. Where authority consolidates, exclusion often follows. When doctrine becomes static, the living word loses its vitality. The result is division, us versus them, saved versus lost. From these binaries, conflict has frequently emerged, sometimes ideological, sometimes violently physical. The extraordinary beauty and promise of religion risked being overshadowed by rigid belief systems that no longer invited inquiry or experience. As with many forces adopted by centralized power, corruption followed proximity to control. Fear replaced wonder. Hierarchies emerged that intertwined religion with political dominance, economic leverage, and cultural supremacy. What once unified small communities through shared meaning and devotion was now capable of producing guilt, coercion, and fragmentation. In many cases, religion drifted from a path of freedom into a system of bondage. And yet, this is not the end of the story. Periods of spiritual rigidity have always been followed by renewal. When institutions harden, life responds. When religion freezes, a new spark of awakening becomes necessary. Historically, that spark has never come from the hierarchy. It has come from individuals willing to rediscover the sacred through direct experience. That spark is not reserved for prophets or reformers alone. It is present now in you, the viewer, invited not to abandon religion entirely, but to move beyond belief into lived understanding. Beyond doctrine into encounter. Beyond inherited certainty into awakened participation. Through years of quiet study, cloistered in libraries and wandering the aisles of used bookstores, I began to notice something unmistakable. Beneath the diversity of doctrines, symbols, and stories, many of the world's religions carry the same essential truths. Across continents and centuries, these teachings echo one another, as though each tradition were speaking a different dialect of the same underlying language. Compassion and love appear again and again as central virtues. From the Buddhist emphasis on loving kindness to the Judeo-Christian call to love one's neighbor, to Hindu paths of devotion and indigenous traditions of communal care, the message is remarkably consistent. Religion at its best does not merely explain that we exist, it guides us in how to live, how to treat one another, how to soften the heart, how to serve something greater than ourselves. Another shared theme is transcendence, the invitation to look beyond the material world toward a deeper unity. Whether named God, Tao, Spirit, the Great Mystery, or the All That Is, the impulse is the same, to look upward and inward at once. The myths of different cultures, ancient and modern alike, speak to a common longing for reunion, for belonging, for a return to something remembered but not easily named. There are striking similarities in story, symbol, and ritual. From ancient Near Eastern myths to Vedic hymns, from the Gospels of Aboriginal Dreamtime narratives, the same archetypal movements appear: origin, separation, transformation, and return. Rituals, whether sacrament, pilgrimage, meditation, chant, or dance, serve a similar function everywhere. They suspend the ordinary flow of time and open a doorway to the sacred. Scholars have long noted that myths across cultures often link the creation of humanity directly to the creation of the cosmos itself, suggesting that our search for meaning has always been inseparable from our sense of place in the universe. Finally, religion has consistently fostered community. Tribes, temples, churches, monasteries, and set songs have all served containers for shared meaning. Through collective worship, storytelling, and service, people found belonging and purpose. To belong and to contribute remains one of the deepest human needs. But the story doesn't end here. This is the heart of what I wish to convey. Religion has been and remains a vital stage in humans' evolution. This is the heart of what I wish to convey. Religion has been and remains a vital stage in humanity's evolution. It gave us myth, ritual, moral structure, community, and hope. Yet it was never meant to be the final resting place. Religion was a map, not the destination. It pointed towards the journey, but it could not walk it for us. And now, as we walk together, you are invited to step beyond the map, into the journey itself. So what does this mean for you? If you arrive at this video as a religious person, you may feel honored, not judged. Your faith is sacred, and your journey is uniquely your own. The beliefs you inherited were not accidents. They served a purpose. They carried truth. They brought you part of the way. But for many, the next step is not more belief. It is direct experience. Your own communion with Spirit. Your own inner knowing. Your own lived awakening. Too often, people receive the framework of religion without ever embodying what that framework was meant to support. The living, breathing presence of the divine. If you arrive as a spiritual seeker or someone who stands outside of formal tradition, know this too. Religion is part of the landscape. It is a mountain many have climbed, but it does not need to be your final home. You may receive the gifts of myth, ritual, wisdom, and devotion without remaining bound by structure or doctrine. No religion has ever been a one-size-fits-all expression of truth. History is filled with extraordinary individuals who did not conform to religious systems, yet lived in profound alignment with spirit, allowing universal truth to express itself freely through them without boundary. Take a moment now to reflect. What beliefs have you inherited from family, culture, or tradition? Which of them feel life-giving, expansive, and true? Which feel constricting, more like rules than revelation? What yearnings stir quietly beneath the surface for love, for freedom, for knowing beyond doctrine? You are allowed to walk beyond what was culturally inherited into what can be directly known. You are allowed to follow the resonance of your heart, whether that path leads deeper into your inherited faith, into another tradition, or into a unique, non-conforming expression of the divine. The ancient fingers that once pointed toward other religions were often echoes of tribal preservation, not divine exclusion. In a world where most people never traveled far from where they were born, the sacred revealed itself in countless forms shaped by landscape, language, music, and culture. What was once framed as division was, in truth, diversity of expression. The divine has always spoken in many voices. The invitation now is to listen deeply, personally, and without fear. Religion, when seen clearly, is neither enemy nor idol. It is a chapter in our collective story, one written in reverence and struggle, beauty and fear, devotion and longing. It carried humanity through eras where inspiration was needed to explain the stars, where ritual was needed to bind communities, and when moral structure was needed to protect fragile societies. For this, religion deserves respect, but respect does not require permanence. What once served as scaffolding must eventually be removed so that the living structure can stand on its own. We are now living in such a moment. The questions religion once held on humanity's behalf are being returned to us personally, intimately, and without intermediaries. The invitation is no longer to believe about the sacred, but to encounter it directly, not through inherited answers, but through lived experience, not through borrowed authority, but through inner knowing. This is not a rejection of the past, but its fulfillment. And so the story continues, not outward, but inward. If religion was humanity's childhood, learning through story, symbol, and structure, then what comes next is a kind of maturity, a turning toward direct experience, a rediscovery of the divine, not as something distant, separate, or exclusive, but as something immediate, intimate, and alive within us. In the next chapter of our experience, we step into that interior landscape. We move away from history toward experience, away from inherited frameworks and toward lived awakening. What follows is not theory nor belief, but the unfolding of consciousness itself, how awakening arises, what it reveals, and how it transforms the way we live. This is where the journey becomes personal. The story of religion is not merely a story of the past, it is the story of humanity's search for meaning, belonging, and direct relationship with the sacred. Every myth, inspiration, ritual, temple, scripture, and tradition has pointed towards something beyond itself. Perhaps the greatest invitation is not to choose between religion or spirituality, but to discover the living truth that both have always sought to reveal. The map has brought us this far. The journey itself now awaits. The next step belongs to you. As always, much light, love, and happiness to you always.